Alrighty, so let's get started. We are going to be talking about phase one, uno, of World War II. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about the actions of Germany, the actions of Italy, the inactions of Britain and France that helped bring us to this point of war in Europe. So this first video is going to look at this war, this declaration of war, and the immediate aftermath. So we have a couple of learning objectives here for this video. So first of all, this is just to understand the opening movements of World War II, how we got to where we're going to wind up. And this video is essentially just a timeline of events, so just to kind of understand and know the order that things happened. Okay, so here we go. Boom! We have a map of Europe in 1939. So it's really kind of important to have an idea of what Europe was looking like, especially when we get to the end of World War II and we look again at what Europe looks like now. And as we get started, remember that Germany is allied with a really large number of countries in Europe. It has annexed Austria, and it has annexed the Czech portion of Czechoslovakia, and Slovakia is a puppet state. So, boom, let's continue. So, World War II can be divided into three distinct phases. This video is kind of like preparing that phase one. We're getting that opening portion of phase one, which is a blitzkrieg against Poland. And also during this phase, there's an establishment of a stable front along Germany's western front during the winter of 1939-1940. This is known as the Phony War. And then World War II, in earnest, in terms of boom, 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 bomb, 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 fighting, 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 begin with an offensive through the Low Countries. And this is the part that includes the fall of Belgium and the Netherlands, the fall of France, and the battle for Britain, so the aerial bombing against Britain. And phase three is this transformation of a European war into a much larger conflict with the involvement of the Soviet Union and the U.S. And ultimately, this leads to the destruction of Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan. Boom. September 1, 1939. Before we get started with this, remember what's going on. So we've spoken about this already, but China and Japan are in the third year of the Sino-Japanese War. Essentially, World War II has already begun in Asia. All right? Hitler invades Poland by air, sea, and land, and Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Norway, and Switzerland declare neutrality. Britain begins general mobilization. Remember that they had guaranteed Poland's integrity, and after the Munich agreements, and especially after the Hitler's invasion and taking over Czechoslovakia, Britain and France had provided a guarantee to Poland of having their back should Hitler come a-banging at their door. When we get to September 2, Britain and France haven't declared war yet, but they give an ultimatum to Germany. And they said, dude, man, get out of Poland or we will declare war. You need to withdraw from Poland. Italy declares her neutrality. Italy doesn't join the war until the next year. And Britain knows war is happening, and this is when conscription begins with all males between 18 and 41. So we have a number of things happening on September 3rd. The British Prime Minister, Chamberlain, declares war on Germany. Remember that Germany had been given that ultimatum, and they were like, bump this. Australia, India, and New Zealand also declare war on Germany. Now, obviously, these places are all the way on the other side of the world, and that's one of the things that makes this a world war, because these countries are dominions of Great Britain. And so once Britain has declared war, they also make that choice, and this expands it into a world war, and we will have significant numbers of soldiers from these countries fighting in Europe and in other places. France also declares war, and within hours, basically, the longest running battle of World War II begins when a German ship torpedoes a British cruise ship, not a school trip or school bus, but a cruise ship, and this is the Battle of the Atlantic. And here's a Honda map. And so you can see here the Allied and Axis powers. So the U.S. is still remaining neutral. In black, we have the Axis powers. And keep in mind, despite the Rome-Berlin Axis, despite this pact of steel and this tight friendship between Germany and Italy, Italy at this point in time is neutral. And so the Axis powers are Japan and Germany and some allies. And obviously the Soviet Union is there, and the Soviet Union signed her non-aggression pact with Germany, so they're not involved. But all of the blue that you see are Britain and France and their colonies. So September 4, Japan announces her neutrality in the European war. She's keeping her focus in Asia, which is one of those things that's interesting. When the U.S. declares war on Japan, Germany declares war on the U.S., even though Japan was uninvolved in the European war. Britain announces a naval blockade of Germany. They are attempting to use a similar strategy, a similar tactic, rather, that worked in World War I, that is blockading, preventing Germany from being able to access the ocean and trade and et cetera. And in the phony war, we'll talk about a little bit more why that had limited effectiveness. The U.S. launches what is called the Neutrality Patrol. Basically, the U.S. says, y'all, my sphere of influence is the Americas. Y'all best step off. But, different. And basically, she's sending ships throughout the Americas, and she has basically declared the waters around the Americas as to be a fighting-free zone from, European conflict. And she will enforce the peace, basically, the neutrality of the Americas. Now, what the U.S. does do is she's neutral and all, but she's all spreading all kinds of gossip. So when she saw a British ship, not a German ship, she would announce it, and then the British would know what German ships were. But, don't say it. All right. So September 5th, the U.S. declares her neutrality. September 7th, France begins an offensive into the Saar. So remember that the Saar is that coal and iron producing region, that economically important region that is on the border between France and Germany. However, France being France, they get 12 kilometers in, and then they basically turn around. So they're basically saying, Poland, baby, you on your own, but in French. So by the 16th, they have retreated fully back to France. September 15th, Poland is ordered to hold out at the Romanian border until the Allies arrive. It's all well and good to tell Poland this, but by the next day, Germany has completely surrounded Warsaw. And by September 17th, the Soviet Union invades Poland and occupies the lands lost during the Polish-Soviet War. This is basically the Soviet Union intended, or one of the things that they intended, the secret pact in the Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact. And so you can see here, looking at our map, the lands that were annexed by the Soviet Union and the lands that were annexed by Germany at this point. So things are moving pretty rapidly, and then they stall during the winter. So we have, at September 27th, Germany starts firing on villages behind the Maginot Line. That is basically Germany is firing into France. And September 28th, the German-Soviet boundary and Friendship Treaty specified the partitioning of Poland. This treaty is basically the formalization of the secret parts of the Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact. Essentially, Poland ceases to exist on paper, but with the invasion of Germany into Poland, the Polish government went into exile in the UK, in England. So Poland exists, like the spirit of Poland exists. There's a government that's functioning, but the country ceases to exist because it is annexed by by Germany and the Soviet Union. September 28th, the remaining Polish army in Warsaw fall to the Germans, and September 28th, the Soviet Union sees an opportunity to also expand into the Baltic states. Now remember, the Baltic states were essentially lands that were lost by the Soviet Union during the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. And so the Soviet Union basically amasses at the borders of Latvia, and they force Estonia to sign a mutual assistance pact, allowing the Soviet Union military bases in the country. September 30th, France anticipates a German invasion. So by the time we get to this point, basically, at this point, the Soviet Union is able to gain control of the Baltic states and establish military bases in Latvia and Lithuania. They already did that in Estonia. And so this essentially meant that the Soviet Union has the lands back that she had lost at the end of World War I to Germany in the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. And remember, these countries were created out of those lands with the Paris Peace Conference. And for Stalin, this means that he has gained himself extra buffer areas to protect the heart of the Soviet Union. October 2nd, there's a declaration of Panama by the U.S., which declares a 500 to 2,000 kilometer distance around the Americas to be free of belligerent acts. October 10th, Hitler, and part of this kind of thinking about what we've spoken about previously, Hitler is a bit surprised. He did not expect Britain and France to refuse to negotiate. And so he does not want to get into a war with Britain, and he offers a peace to Britain, and Britain is like, okay, I have put my foot down, and no. Also on October 10th, the last of the Polish forces surrender. On October 12th, Hitler offers to negotiate a peace with France, and France declines. October 16th begins the first air attack on Britain, and by October 19th, the portions of Poland are formally annexed into Germany. That is, for Germany, they become a legal part of Germany. October 27th, Belgium announces neutrality. It didn't work in World War I, and it most definitely will not. So in looking in November, by November 1st, Poland is formally divided and annexed. November 3rd, new borders have been negotiated by Finland and the Soviet Union. Negotiations break down on the 13th. We'll talk a little bit more about this winter war when we look at the phony war portion. November 4th, the U.S. passes a Neutrality Act, and this allows them to sell arms to France and Britain, but purely on a cash basis. Later on in the war, the U.S. is going to sell them stuff on credit. But the U.S. is basically still maintaining that position of isolationism, as we've spoken about previously. November 8th, there's an assassination attempt on Hitler, but he manages to live. On the 20th, German Air Force and Navy begin mining the Thames estuary. So the Thames estuary is basically the mouth of the Thames River, so the part of the Thames River that reaches into the English Channel, and they start dropping mines there to try to make it difficult for Britain to deploy her ships. On the 26th, the Soviet Union stages a shelling to accuse and start a conflict with Finland. And this is the beginning of the Winter War. In December, I don't know what Italy's thinking, but they're like, I just want everybody to know I'm still neutral. My name is Bennett. I ain't in it. But y'all, it was all in Italian. And on the 14th, a day late and a dollar short, the League of Nations expels the Soviet Union because of the invasion of Finland in the Winter War. Day late and a dollar short, League of Nations. But you know what? Bless them. At least they were trying. So from December 18th to the 27th, you basically have the first Canadian Indian troops are arriving in France. There is this preparation for fighting on the continent. And this is it for now. You will need to watch the next video, which looks at the Winter War. Please note any questions you might have and ask later.